Hi, welcome to the bathtub. This is the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield, the old masturbator's dog, Lucky the Wonder Dog. Lucky wants to come up and say hi for the new year. Happy New Year, Lucky. Tell him, oh, Happy New Year. Don't bite me. Oh, she's a good dog today. She hasn't bitten me all day. And that's where she bit me last time. Oh my gosh, this poor dog. Anyway, we got something to do here for you. Let me get down. Okay, good dog. No, now she snapped at me there. Good dog. Be good. It's time for Battle of the Bathtubs. Battle of the Bathtubs. One bathtub blue, one's yellow. One of them's they're gonna wrestle. One of them's gonna win. It's two mightily feud bathtubs fighting to the vengeance. Hi, Lucky Dog. Yes, I'm sorry you couldn't stay up here, but you're just too unpredictable. What are the books we're gonna do? We're gonna do two. This is a really interesting bathtub today, and it's brought to you by. Don't forget, this is a pointless show. I gotta start flogging my books. It's brought to you by my old novel, Good Girl Wants It Bad. $15 signed. I'll send it to you or your grandma. This is not for your grandma or the kids. This is the only one of my books that could be considered kind of filthy. It's not really filthy, but it's about a woman who loves sex and possibly murdering people. And that's the gist of that one. It's a very hard one to find. And, of course, the Bathtub crossover edition. If you watch the Bathtub, you really need to play along at home. You want to play the game along at home. This is the Bathtub for home viewers. Essays and reviews, 2005, 2021. Reading great books in the bathtub because it's in the bathtub. That's what it's about. And On the Planet of Bold Women, which is my most recent novel. I'm trying to get myself geared up to publish a sequel to the Bathtub book. So instead of doing that, I'm trying to flog my old ones. Okay, so this is an interesting battle because it's by two different writers. I've told you a bit about my. I guess I can't say this is many science fiction writers I read when I was a kid. Some of them I keep reading over and over. I keep reading over the years, and one of them I keep going back to is Jack Vance. We've talked about Jack Vance. We had him in the bathtub not long ago. And the Dying Earth series The Dying Earth is his most famous book. And if you want to read a weird fantasy, it's far future science fiction, very much influenced by Clark Ashton Smith. You can really see a lot of Smith's vision of this dying world in the Dying Earth series. I think it was Vance's earliest short stories. And he published this in there. This was published in the 50s, but the stories could be even older. Published in 1950. I read this as a kid. It was always in my mind. I read it. I must have read it twice since then. And this is the first one. He wrote a sequel to it. This is the interesting part of our story here, called The Eyes of the Overlord. That was my favorite reread. One of my favorite rereads last year. I think we put it in our favorite books. It's from 1966. Vance had an interesting career in the sense that he wrote kind of novelettes. Not short stories so much as they're kind of 40, 50-page stories. It was kind of his perfect length. And his imagination and his visions of these weird societies and weird aliens and weird social life. Unpixelated water. If you're going to bathe the vengeance, you got to have unpixelated water. So he wrote these, but the best length for him was these novelettes. And The Eyes of the Overworld I liked it the first time, but I loved it the second time. It's about a guy named Kugel the Clever. He's one of the characters who shows up in the Dying Earth. I think he dies in the Dying Earth, that's what I recall. And it's about how some magician punishes him by sending him to the far ends of the earth. And he's got to travel back through all these weird adventures, all these weird societies. It's just fast. He's like a great storyteller, great tall tale teller. And he's very good at his characters kind of traveling across ridiculous lengths of ridiculous worlds and one story after another. So that's the way he plots it. He wasn't really a great plotter of novels, old Vance, though I hear his later books, he starts to get better. Anyway, really great fun. So what happened? Well, that was the last, in 1966 that came out, and there was not another Dying Earth novel for quite a long time. And this guy came along, Michael Shea. We've talked about Michael Shea. And Michael Shea wrote a sequel. He loved that book. He read it somewhere like he was traveling. He found it in some hotel or something. He read that book, and he loved it. So he wrote a story taking off from the end I don't want to tell you what happens at the end of Eyes of the Overworld, but he takes Kugel the Clever from that point and takes him on another quest at a kind of episodic, picaresque journey across this dying planet. And it's called Quest for Simbilis. It comes out in 1974, and I guess he showed it to Vance and offered to give Vance some money, and Vance let him publish it and just keep the advance. It couldn't have been very much money. Vance was supposed to be a very nice guy. I have friends who knew him. Anyway, he published his story, and it's about Kugel Clever traveling across the planet. He meets somebody else, I forget, and they journey together. And it's a series of episodic adventures, and it's great fun. Michael Shea is one of my few SF discoveries of the last decade. I never read him in the 70s. He kind of came in just as I stopped reading a lot of SF. And he's a talented writer, mainly horror and fantasy. And this is really quite fun pastiche. He really has a sense of the Vance imagination, and he obviously learns a lot from him. And he tells a wonderful story for the most part. The first half of it is the best part. And to give you a couple examples, at one point, Kugel and his partner, I forget who, they somehow get involved with some group of travelers. They're always meeting travelers and traveling and getting to know these people. And these travelers basically take them and they want to sell them to a bunch of zombies or something that live in the earth, or dead people. I don't know how it works exactly. I don't remember exactly. And they take all these people on their caravan. And they plan to sell them to these zombies, and Kugel gets away. He's always getting out of all these situations, and they journey through this underworld. And at one point, the zombies take the dead bodies of the people they kill. They chop them up and they plant them in the ground, like the head at the top of this pyre of arms and legs. And their bodies keep growing, so these zombies can eat off these dead bodies or something. It sounds crazy, it sounds stupid, but it's so visually beautifully done. And then there's another one where they're traveling across some landscape, and there's a huge ravine they can't cross, and there's only one bridge. They travel for miles and miles, and it's guarded by a magician who insists that they beat him at a game of cards. They can't get across. It's one tall tale after another. They're wonderfully legendary, almost hauntingly visualized stories. And I liked it very much. I found the second half of the book a little, it kind of gets into one story, and I got a little bit lost and lost interest in it maybe. I want to give you a quick description, just one paragraph, of a region that they're traveling across. I think they're captured by some zombies or some monsters, and they're taken across this landscape. And I'll give you just a quick paragraph to show you how well he can set up scenes. The region abounded in a species of land crab whose upper shells imitated stones. The creatures were toughly resilient, and when stepped on, which frequently happened, they wrenched themselves from underfoot with violent suddenness. This did not bother the Shea zombies who were taking them across, whose feet were highly prehensile, but the trio was invariably cast down when any one of them stepped on one of the beasts. But the land crabs did not need to be stepped on to cause the trio woe. The little creatures were extremely irritable and seemed to detest one another. Whence it often happened that flare-ups occurred, squabbles, between a pair of the animals which spread to their neighbors. Instantly a small storm of battling land crabs would spring up, a whirlwind tall as a man moving along the riverbank. When one of these little blizzards crossed the path of the party, it engulfed the prisoners, baffled them with a hail of bites and blows, and threw them to the ground. Imperturbably, the Shea zombies set them on their feet after each fall and hastened them along. So these little crabs are on the ground, and they fight until they build these huge mounds that kind of cover people like a bunch of bees. Almost every paragraph and page has some visually inventive and beautiful passage in it, and it's real. The Quest for Simbilis is a really kind of lovely little homage to the dying Earth. Okay, so Shea writes this book, and then many years later, that was 1973, Jack Vance himself decides he's going to write a sequel. 1983, he writes CUGEL'S Saga, and it's very similar in the sense that we start off from the same point that Quest for Simbilis does. Kugel is in this place, and he wants to get somewhere and get revenge on this magician who put him there. And it's a very, very episodic book. It's a fairly longish novel. It's about 350 pages, fairly small print. And I read it very, you can only read so much because it's like a series of episodes, a series of adventures, getting across from one place to another. Mainly involved in caravans and Kugel tricking people. And everywhere he goes, he has all his money taken away. And he has to make money again. And he's always cheating and ripping people off. I found this one of the most absorbing, beautifully written adventure fantasy. It's really a fantasy novel about this guy going around the world and getting involved in all these kind of magical situations and learning magical tricks. And I can't even tell you how many different stories in it. I think I forgot some. I read it, just finished it yesterday. I had a great time with it. And he meets so many different interesting characters. There's one part where he goes to a village and he notices that all the men wear masks over their faces. And it turns out this is because the women in the village are extremely horny. Whenever they see a man, they attack him and try to have sex with him. So the men wear these masks. It's kind of a reversal of issues. And the men are very timid and kind of afraid of all these women. And at one point, Kugel wears the mask pretending he's somebody so he can cheat the man who owns a boat to give him the boat. I forget exactly the story. And he goes off and he takes this guy and he delivers him to one of the women. And when the guy comes out, there's a lot of offstage humor. The stuff I always really like, which is, the guy goes off, he dumps him in this woman's house, and he didn't see him again for like a few hours. The guy comes back completely disheveled and dispirited by life after this woman's attacked him. It's a really wonderful book. I don't even know where. I think I had a couple of passages to read, just because there's so much invention in it. If I was to suggest one, if you do like kind of science fiction, fantasy, weird, visually interesting fantasy, I'd really strongly recommend the whole Dying Earth series. You kind of have to read the first two books to enjoy this one. But I had a great time with it. I think there wasn't a single boring page. Again, there's not really a plot so much as there's this series of stories. And eventually when he meets the bad magician and what he wants to do to get back at the guy, he finds this. He's always finding things on the beach that everyone wants. And he finds some shell or something that he wants to bring in that this bad magician wants. Anyway, he takes it to him, and I won't tell you what happens. One great story after another. I'm just going to read a quick. Let me just read any passage here. I don't even remember what's happening. This is called The Inn of the Blue Lamps, and it's just played where he goes somewhere to try to cheat somebody. When Master Soldic returned to Fludic in search of his missing scales, Kugel decided not to take part in the inquiry. It's because he stole them. He immediately departed Fludic by an obscure route and set off to the west town, the town of Saskervoy. He's kind of famous for coming up with great names. After a period, Kugel paused to catch his breath. His mood was bitter. Through the duplicity of underlings, he carried not a valuable parcel of scales, but only a handful of ordinary. So he's collected all these scales to sell, these bits of scales. And a single special distinction, the Malar Astrangal. I can't pronounce it. The most precious scale of all, the pectoral skybreak spatterlight, remained hidden in the back garden at Fludic, but Kugel hoped to retain the scale, if only because it was coveted by Ayukunu, the laughing magician. So he's always hiding these things so people don't steal them from him. Kugel again set off along the road through a dank forest of thamber, oak, yew, murnash, and goblin tree. Wan red sunlight sifted through the foliage. Shadows, by some trick of perception, seemed to be stained dark blue. Kugel maintained an uneasy watch to either side, as was only prudent during these latter times. He's going through forests and all sorts of weird creatures in all of them. He saw much that was strange and sometimes beautiful. White blossoms held high on tall tendrils above spangles of low, flat leaves. Fairy castles of fungus growing in shelves, terraces and turrets over rotting stumps, patterns of black and orange bracken. Once, indistinct at a distance of 100 yards, Kugel thought to see a tall, man-like shape in a lavender jerkin. Kugel Kugel carried no weapon, and he breathed easier when the road, mounting a hillside, broke out into the afternoon daylight. I won't read any more than that. I just want to give you, every paragraph has all these visual beauties and imaginative flourishes, and the stories themselves are great. Just wonderful, wonderful book. One of my favorite books. That's just probably one of my favorite books of 2025 already. All right, stay safe. We battle the bathtub. Who wins it? Michael Shea, Jack Vance. They're both dead, so neither of them can be too disappointed. But I have to, you got to give it to Vance. I mean, Shea does a terrific job in his volume, but this is Vance at his best. 1983, and I also have the sequel to that called Rialto the Marvelous. He did these late in his life, Jack Vance, and I only wish he could have done a few more of these. I think this is the last of the novels. He may have done a few stories. All right. Definitely try the Dying Earth series by Jack Vance if you like really strange, beautiful, exotic, Clark Ashton Smith type fantasies.